Hey everyone, David here. Severance is back. The Lorehounds are partnering with Properly Howard to bring you in-depth weekly coverage of Season 2. Join me, John, Anthony, and Steve as we unpack every twist, theory, and revelation. We've created a dedicated feed just for our Severance coverage. Simply search for Severance Lorehounds in your podcast app, or find the direct link in our link tree. Our weekly episodes dig deep into the show's mysteries, themes, and bigger questions about identity and consciousness that makes Severance so compelling. Season Pass and regular community subscribers get ad-free access to our weekly episodes, plus exclusive content like our Supply Closet bonus series, featuring fascinating conversations with experts like the team from Nevermind the Music. We've explored the neuroscience of memory and personality, decoded the hidden meanings in the show's musical themes, and there's much more to come. You'll also get Steve and Anthony's complete Season 1 rewatch series. We believe in total transparency with our listeners, and unlike mammalians nurturable, we're happy to share all of our secrets. Find the link for the Severance feed in the show notes below, or search Severance Lorehounds wherever you get your podcasts. Come theorize with us about what's really happening at Lumen.
And remember, the episode you think you're about to hear is merely a reflection of the episode that thinks it's about to be heard.
Luke, that's the last time we're going to play that intro music in a recording for a little bit.
I know. Single tear rolls down my cheek.
I like the Dune music too, but
yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, that will always be our music.
Yeah, the OG.
The OG, yeah.
So hello, Team Will Shift Dust, Elysia and Luke here. We've missed you. And I know a bunch of you have missed Luke because you've been telling me so. But we're back to wrap up the Silo season for the public feed. There was also 2 last spoiler casts for Silas and Stories and season pass holders in those feeds. Stick around to the end to hear more about that. Luke, what is our general spoiler policy for this podcast?
So Elysia has read all the books that go to comprise the TV series Silo. I have read none of them. So we will be spoiling everything up to the end of season 2 is fair game, but we won't talk about anything. Elysia won't talk about anything that's happened in the books past the end of season 2.
Right. So that is basically, for the most part, the first book, Wool. And there are some elements of the first book I will leave out because they haven't played out on screen, like that whole fiery interlude at the end. That is resolved in the first book, but we'll find out next season how the TV show resolves it. But there are a few things that I skirted around in my finale recording with John that I've decided I can talk about. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, first of all, Luke, glad you're feeling a bit better.
Yes, thanks to John for stepping in. Because when that episode was being recorded, to paraphrase Patrick Kennedy, I was on drugs, lots of drugs. So it would have been an interesting, but perhaps not very coherent podcast. So
I would have loved to hear the theories.
Yeah, so thanks for John for stepping in. And thank you to everybody that's reached out on the Discord and Blue Sky with well wishes. I think I replied to everybody, but if I didn't, just know that I appreciate it very much. And you made me feel a lot better when I needed to feel a lot better. So thank you, everybody.
And Luke, fair is fair. Do you want to do your American accent impression of John?
No, I thought about this, but I did think, with John's impression, I did think that at any second he was going to burst into a round of "thank you very much."
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very much. That's from our Christmas Carol series for anyone
Yeah,
who's
that's from
wondering.
the holiday specials.
And Luke, you got a chance to listen to my interview also with Sal Calleros from the Silo Writers Room. Thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was very interesting describing the way each episode is put together and the way that it's such an iterative process. So it's not just one script writer writes a script and then other script writers pull it apart and reassemble it. It's actually very carefully plotted out in advance before pen touches paper on an actual script. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I want to go away and watch Sneaky Pete now because any chance to get a bit more Shane McRae, I'm going to take.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was interesting that the writers' room has remained virtual post pandemic. Because obviously that's a topic that's increasingly in the news in a whole variety of different fields, and it's something that in higher education that I work in, we've had to sort of work out what the new balance was going to be between in-person and remote working. Right. So just with like my professional hat on, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciated also that Sal was able to talk openly, honestly about the logistics behind decisions that, for instance, the agoraphobia thing, I got an answer to my Danny question of sorts, which I'm taking to mean they were reminding us because he's coming back next season.
I just love the very subtle way that you sort of worked into the conversation. And there were several mentions of Danny Bly, but we never got to see him. What's the deal?
I've been very subtle this entire podcast. But also, I mean, it's the same, like, because I'm wondering, I do want, like John said, I want the montage at the end of the episode where I'm like, Mark Chambers is still downstairs. What will happen next season? But what were you shared your thoughts in a voicemail in the finale overall, but do you have anything to add here now that you're live?
I went away and watched the entire episode subsequently on a proper TV screen rather than on my phone. And I have to say, it was obviously a much better experience. The action, parts of the episode were much clearer. I do think there's like I said in the voice note, I'm now edging towards the idea that this is a social experiment, but it's not aliens, it's the singularity. Like the algorithm might be some sort of super artificial intelligence. Like my favorite line of the entire episode was Bernard at the end going, "I know who did this, but I don't know what, but I don't know why." So, because I thought that's classic, and that's a classic line for a final episode. It's textbook enigmatic. It could mean anything.
I know what it means.
I mean, having rewatched the episode, I'm fairly convinced Bernard is dead. I would be very if he comes back in season 3, I'm gonna want an explanation of how he got out of there.
Okay. So do you think he threw himself on Juliet, or do you think it's just because Juliet was in a fire suit and he's not?
I think it's probably some combination of the two. But I think if you watch that scene back and sort of take it frame by frame, which I did, maybe it's just the way it's shot, but it looked to me like he was falling on top of Juliet, that he was sort of covering her with his body. Whether he intended to do that's a different question, but that looks like what happened to me.
I love how there's no questions about whether or not Juliet's dead. She could be dead.
Yeah, let's not. It's not what and I gotta say the first time I watched this, I was still on pretty heavy pain medication, and the whole
Mhm.
cut to Washington DC, it's like
Yeah, like, what?
what? But yeah, really excited about that. Really excited that we're going to have another element of the plot. Really excited to see really excited to see Jessica Henwick.
Mhm.
As John said, she was the best thing in Iron Fist, and
Mhm.
there's not a lot of competition for that
Mhm.
accolade. But I always give actors extra credit for being good in bad shows.
Right.
Because that's harder. Just a couple of things about the dirty bomb and the
Okay.
whole sort of mise en scène that was established in that. So I think if humanity being forced into the silo is a result of a nuclear war, which
Mhm.
is what that suggests, I hope the way it plays out is that the silos were constructed prior to the war actually happening,
Mhm.
and the survivors had to make their way down into the silos, because in the event of a strategic nuclear exchange between, say, the United States and Russia, the environmental damage and the chaos that would cause, in my sort of professional opinion, would be too great for any kind of program of like silo building to take place after it
Mm.
happened.
Mhm.
So again, my headcanon at this point is, if it is the singularity, it convinced the humans to build the silos before the nuclear war, and then it skynetted the whole thing. It created
Okay.
a nuclear war.
I don't know if you caught, by the way, but they blamed it on Iran.
Yes, they did.
Um, but what did you think about Helen? Is the name of the character played by Jessica Henwick? What did you think about her allegations that it might not have happened at all? That dirty bomb in DC.
Well, I mean, I think you and John covered that quite well. So a dirty bomb is conventional explosive wrapped around some kind of fissile material. So from a terrorist point of view, the good thing about a dirty bomb is it doesn't need to be highly enriched
Mm-hmm.
um, nuclear material like you would need for a nuclear weapon. So uranium 235 or plutonium 239. It can be anything. It can be one of the nightmare scenarios that you read a lot in the professional literature is that it would be the radioactive waste taken from hospitals used
Mm.
in MRI, the treatment of cancer
Mm-hmm.
or X-rays, because that is probably the most numerous radiological material, and it's also the one that's most routinely disposed of. So yeah, a dirty bomb would be designed to make a relatively small area, say between 10 and 20 city blocks,
Mm-hmm.
uninhabitable. But it's really more to do with the psychological effect of that than the actual damage it would
Mm.
do.
Mm-hmm. So you say it doesn't matter whether or not it really happened if people believe it does?
Yeah, I think that's where I land on that.
Okay. 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 Well, you get sad internet points about Papa Nichols.
No, see, I think he survived so much longer than I thought he was going to be. I don't think I get internet points for that. I think I'm a stop clock there. I just happened to be right this one time, because I've expected him to die so many different times now.
So I said in that episode that he does not die at this point in the books, not at all. So I was really, whoa, Abby's very unhappy about it. But who are you most glad did not die in the finale?
I think. Well, actually, no. This is really easy.
Mm-hmm.
Shirley and Knox,
Mm-hmm.
because it broke the string of couples coming to, and actually Carla and
Mm-hmm.
Walker as well. It finally broke our string of couples coming to sticky ends.
Mm.
So yeah, I think Shirley Knox. Very glad that Down Deep Deputy Hank survived as well, because I wasn't sure he was going to.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to something I was coy about in the finale breakdown that I've decided, these are things that happened in the books already. So we've passed the point in the books. These things are not going to happen. But if you're about to read the first book, you might not want to hear what I have to say right now. So you might want to skip forward twice. But I'm going to tell you who died at this point in the books, who is still alive in the show. And now, as far as I know, they'll be alive until the end, because they lived through the rebellion. Both of them died in the rebellion. The two people who I thought were going to die based on the books are Knox and Carla.
I'm so glad they changed that. I'm so glad they I would have been. I mean, not so much Carla because she was a bit of a secondary character, but if Knox had died, I would have been seriously upset. Because he's been one of my favorite characters of season 2.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, so to tell you a bit more about how they die in the books, so Knox, they both basically die in the same assault on IT. And yeah, Knox is gunned down, but I thought that he's gunned down first, and I thought that they would at that point take then Shirley's husband's story, which is who didn't make it into the show, obviously, and so I thought he would survive that, and then Shirley's husband Mark went running out of there, and he's like desperately looking for Shirley because they split up for reasons I've explained before in spoilercast. And he eventually catches up with her back at the barricade, back to the down deep, and she can shimmy under the barricade, and he gets basically gunned down there. And it's a really beautiful death scene from his perspective, where it's kind of like almost peaceful, but he sees her, crying and screaming and stuff. I read that out in I guess the Wool book breakdown for the book club people. But yeah, that's if you're going to read the books, that's a really memorable scene. The other one, Carla, she also died in that assault on IT. But I have to tell you a thing, and I thought they might actually do it because it's twisted. But so what happens is, so Lucas is obviously the shadow to the head of IT, and Bernard basically, once like the assault starts, he just like hands Lucas a gun and props him up in between Billings and Sims, and is like, shoot at the mechanical people. And Lucas is like, what? I was here to read books, not to kill Juliet's friends, or not even that he knows them or thinks of them that way, but he's just not on board with this until at one point, Carla comes charging at him and is about to throw a bomb at him, and he shoots in a panic. And so he's the one who kills her. But she's not called Carla. She's just called McLean.
Yeah, I'm really glad they changed that because I don't want Carla to die, and I certainly don't want Lucas to have been the one that killed her.
I mean, I thought like that's going to be add some complications to, yeah, Martha is obviously would not be a fan of that. But it seems they're going more toward making people allies then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the biggest surprise in the finale for you?
Oh, gotta be Fade to Black, Fade up in near contemporary Washington DC.
Mm-hmm.
Did not see that. Did not even begin to see that coming.
Yeah. And what about Walker and the hand signals? Were you surprised about?
No, I'm with John on that. I think that paid off exceptionally well. Particularly when they'd show you the scene again where you can actually see the hand signals when she's explaining to Bernard that with all the noise in the generator room, they needed to develop a way of having a conversation without actually speaking.
Yeah.
And props to all the actors in that scene because they really sell what, if you'd done it wrong, might have looked like quite a silly or quite a forced scene, but they really sell it properly.
Yeah. And also, yeah, the whole like everyone was team down deep. Like I thought at this point in the books, Billings turns, but now it's like the entire deputies department.
I did think the bit where she threw the sack of deputies badges onto the floor, that was a bit like I like the score. I like the score to Silo, but I do think it's missing like a proper stirring revolutionary anthem to go at those moments. It needs something with a bit more oomph behind it. It needs something a bit more Les Mis-y, for want of a better word.
Do you hear the deputy sing the songs
Exactly,
of
yeah.
the down deep?
Exactly.
Hmm. And then what did you think about the whole? So, other than the Washington D.C. scene, my other personal favorite scene is when the family Sims gets into the vault,
Oh, I
and
can't wait to see how that plays out in season
and it's like,
3.
Rob, take your son and go. We're not interested in you.
But it's like, is that the? Because what I'm thinking is that the algorithm doing that, or is that like Bernard's final revenge on Robert Sims before he goes out, for his betrayal?
you think
Uh,
you think that Bernard is somehow talking through the algorithm?
no, I think in the same way that like when Bernard made Lucas his shadow, he had to introduce him. He had to say.
Right.
So I wonder whether off screen, Bernard went to the algorithm and said, "My new shadow is going to be
Mm-hmm. Oh,
um,
Camille. Oh.
Camille." Yeah, and
Ooh.
that's like his last revenge on Robert for disloyalty.
I don't know. I bought when he like saw Robert on the stairs and he was like, he's like, you were always really loyal to me until you weren't. And I think, part of him wasn't. I don't know if I could ever say Bernard feels bad about things. I don't know if that's really, and if he feels guilt about anything short of killing Meadows. Um but it seemed like, there's a little bit of contrition, like, yeah, I jerked you around a lot, and I guess we're meant to take away that he believed they're all gonna die anyway. So,
Yeah, like I'd be really interested to see, because again, if the algorithm picked Camille,
uh huh.
then that really does add a lot of fuel to the fire of the idea that the algorithm is something more than an interface.
Mm.
That it's an intelligence.
Where would you place Camille on the Simsnard scale now?
Ooh, that is a tough question. Um, I'm gonna say 6, but on the understanding that she might go towards the Juliet side of the scale very quickly in season 3. I think
Okay.
of all the cliffhangers, like the most obvious one to resolve is what's going on in Washington. But I think what's going on with the family Sims runs it a close second.
Okay. Okay. And do you have any more theories on the algorithm and the safeguard?
Well, the safeguard is an interesting one because I don't have any more theories about the safeguard in Silo 18, but I do want to know
Mm-hmm.
what happened with the safeguard in Silo 70. Because let's assume for a second that Jimmy's parents were successful in
Mm-hmm.
stopping the safeguard from being activated.
Mm-hmm.
All those people in Silo 17 still went outside and they still died. And they
Mm-hmm.
still died relatively close to the exit of
Yeah.
Silo 17. So if you go back to episode 1 and you look at the crater that Silo 17 sits in.
But yeah, I mean, that's where the biggest press of the bodies were. But keep in mind, it was a large group of people and they were spread out all the way up to cresting the hill.
Yeah,
And
so
cleaners
so
never get that far.
that leads me to two thoughts. The first is that the people that died must have died relatively quickly because you didn't see any evidence in episode 1 of them trying to build shelter, trying to.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, but from what it sounds like, from what Jimmy keeps saying, is it was fine at first and then it went horribly wrong. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know, like minutes, an hour. It must
yeah.
be
So
less than an
so
hour.
so was whoever's operating the safeguard able to override whatever Jimmy's parents did?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a backup to the safeguard? And also, if the safeguard didn't deploy, wasn't activated, does that mean there is maybe a small group of survivors from Silo 17 outside of the silo on the
Hmm.
surface in the same way that Audrey and Rick and Benny and Hope managed to survive inside Silo 17?
So you think that there might be somewhere on the surface, because I mean, we do need to keep in mind that the deaths we saw in the first season were very real, with like
Yeah,
Holston and Allison and everyone.
yeah. So yeah, so if the safeguard didn't deploy, is there the possibility that a small group of people managed to survive? And
Where?
if the safeguard didn't kill all those people that left Silo 17, what did?
Hmm.
And what killed Allison? What killed Allison and Holston?
I mean, the toxic air outside, yeah.
But 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 Jimmy's dad told the sheriff it was safe to go outside.
Hmm. Hmm. Very interesting.
At least she was on the cusp of saying more than she should.
No, no, no. I mean, to be honest, I still have question marks. Like, I know what the book version of this is, and it's
Okay,
not that this doesn't line up with that, but there are questions about, there are definitely changes. There's always changes.
okay,
But there's questions about how fundamental the nature of the safeguard in the system might be, or, what they're, to tell you the truth, in the books, most of those questions start to come in the second book.
okay,
So, which would be next season.
okay,
So they're on track for, you know, how much the story's messing with us versus.
okay.
um, and thoughts on, while we're talking Silo 17, thoughts on Jimmy and the kids, where that whole story landed and where it might be going next.
I mean, I kind of hope that Jimmy and the kids find a way to make themselves suits to get over to Silo 18. I don't know how that would happen, but I'd kind of like to see the two halves of that story in that timeline come together,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not sure I see a way that the kids and Jimmy can survive long term in Silo 17. I know the pump is now on, so the
Mm-hmm.
groundwater is being pumped out, but the there must be a limit. Like, even if there is a lot of food in the vault, there must be a limit to how much is in there.
Yeah.
Eventually, and like the kids were only just growing enough food to survive, because Hope brackets Eater
Mm-hmm.
keeps talking about having to
Yeah. We
kill
don't call her
rats.
by that name anymore.
No, but just so everybody's,
Yeah.
I only do it once, just so
Mm-hmm.
everybody's clear who we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about. So yeah, I'm not sure I see like a viable path for them to survive in Silo 17 long term.
Okay. So I went through and pulled out the questions that I asked other people so that we can get your answers on these. So we have a little mini series of games.
Yeah, you
Ready?
sent me the notes earlier, so
Yeah. So you've been able to think.
I've been chewing on this for a while.
All right. So rank these three experiences: beers from your own fridge with Sims, home cooked dinner and VR nights with Bernard, or hard drive hunting with new judicial goon in chief Amundsen.
Okay, so I'm gonna go dinner and a show with Bernard,
Mm
because I might die at the end of it, but at least I get a good meal and
hmm.
an interesting floor show. I'm gonna go beers with Sims second,
Mm hmm.
because again I die, but I might get a pleasant conversation first. And the reason I put Sims behind Bernard is I think when Sims kills me, it will probably hurt a good deal more.
And Bernard will poison you nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, than when Bernard kills me. And yeah, hard drive hunting with Amundsen comes last, because we're only going to find a stapler. It just seems futile.
Ce n'est pas un hard drive. I answered these questions in the season finale, so we'll just keep throwing them your way. All right. So, what is your choice about Audrey and the kids in general? Abandon, adopt, feed a meal. Rick, Audrey, Hope.
Okay, so I'm going to adopt Hope,
Mm-hmm.
because she's had a very hard life, and she deserves better. I'm gonna feed Rick, because he
Okay.
hasn't really done anything wrong. And yeah, Audrey can just sod off. Audrey can just sod off, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, John pointed out that that's pretty much the only correct answer, which I'll
Yeah, I
concede.
think so.
All right, you have one day left in the silo, and everything's possible within silo restrictions. How do you spend your time? In the Legacy, exploring the digger room, turning the stairs into a giant slide, or something else?
I think I want to go round the parks, the little cafe parks thing that Carla and Knox and everybody stopped in on the way up from Mechanical to see the judge.
Okay.
I just want to wander, like if I was living in the silo, I just want to wander around those, and I want to wander around the farms and just see a bit of green
Yeah,
before I died.
I'd find some animals to play with, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, it's final one of these games for now. Buddy Cop, Bad Guy, Bump Off, Hanks, Billings, Shirley.
Okay, well, I mean, I think there are now 2 spin-offs that they should do. They should do the Happy Days with Holston and Allison. They should definitely do a buddy cop CSI silo with Billings and Hank.
Hank and Billings, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to bump off Shirley, so
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Sorry, what were my options again? Outside of buddy cop, what were my options again?
Bad Guy.
Bad Guy.
And Bump Off.
But yeah, Bad Guy. I think Shirley, because like you said in the episode 10 show, I think she could do the wrong thing for the right reasons quite easily.
That was my interview with Sal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Bump Off. Oh God, that's gonna have to be Billings.
I know, it's hard.
Oh, I don't want to kill Billings.
I know. Nobody wanted to kill who they killed, but it is interesting. I know it's a good one because we all gave different answers, and nobody wanted to kill anybody.
Yeah.
All right. And your hopes for season 3?
Okay, hopes for season 3. I would like I say, I would like to see the Silo 17 and Silo 18 storylines be brought together, maybe not at the very beginning of the series, but I think running 3 separate storylines, Silo 17, Silo 18, and contemporary Washington might be a little bit much. So I'd like to see the Silo 17 and 18 storylines merge into each other.
Okay.
I want, and I think they will do this because they've been very good at doing this. I don't want like episodes to go by where we don't know whether Bernard is alive or not. I'd like them to wrap that up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I hope we spend a lot of time with Robert Sims next season because I think he is in a really interesting headspace at the end of that season. Because all of his ambitions have come to naught. He has lost, or he is separated from the woman he loves, and who loves him. He has to take care of his son as effectively a single father now. And the same with Billings, actually, because his whole faith in the pact had obviously collapsed by the end of season 2, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes now. And I think Silo 18 in general is in a really interesting space because clearly the rules laid out by the pact no longer apply. Like, that way of organizing the silo clearly isn't coming back, but they are going to have to find like some alternative because no one's leaving anytime soon. So who's going to be in charge of the silo, how the silo is going to work now that there's no Bernard, now that there's no pact, now that there's nobody to enforce the order, or nobody that's willing to. So how is that silo going to organize? It's typical me. I'm thinking about the politics of it and like who has power and how are they going to use it. But I think that would be really interesting. And also, I'd like to see what happens when Juliet and Lucas have the chance to speak, because those characters have gone on quite a journey since the last time they were together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they definitely gave us some teases at the end. There were, if you listen to my interview with Sal Calleros, there were elements from the books that didn't make it into the season because, like, they did have contacts because they were both in the bunkers of the two different silos, and they ended up contacting each other through.
Yeah, so Lucas and Juliet, that is.
Yeah, so that's not, and Sal said in the interview that that doesn't make for riveting television, but I don't
I
know.
can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I
But
see where it's coming from. Yeah.
I think there are ways you could have done that.
Hmm. Yeah, but yeah, so we'll see. I mean, obviously, things are very different because Camille, a character who's not even in the books at all, is now suddenly inside the bunker. So, like, let's see where
With
this takes us.
with full access to the
Mm-hmm.
legacy as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
And
that's a
like,
whole new wrinkle. Yeah.
yeah, and like Camille is gonna have a good time with the legacy,
Mm-hmm.
because rather like Bernard, and well, actually, rather like Bernard, but actually, it's more appropriate to say rather like Meadows and rather like Lucas. She is curious,
Uh-huh. More so than
but
her husband for sure. Maybe not as much as Lucas and Meadows, but more so than her husband for sure.
yeah, and also, but it's going to be curiosity directed to a point, because,
Mm-hmm.
like I was saying a minute ago, that there's now an opening for who runs the silo, and Camille wants to fill that space.
Well, technically, if she's in the bunker, she is the one running the silo. Yeah.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah. The mayor, as we now know, is just a figurehead role. Um, But so speaking of The Sims, I mentioned in the finale episode that there was an AMA, or maybe it was in episode 9 anyway, that we talked about it and linked to the Reddit AMA with Hugh Howey and showrunner Graham Yost, Hugh Howey being the book author. There was a part of it that I just found that I had to read out because it makes me laugh, and it's related to Robert Sims and his jacket. And I get so tired of people asking about the jacket. Like, I don't know, there's cows in the silo. Move on. But so someone asked in the Reddit AMA, and then Hugh Howey gave this answer. He said, I want to do an entire episode about that jacket. My current theory is that the jacket was brand spanking new when the founders built the silo. It belonged to someone important, but it was too sentimental to actually get worn. It was hidden in a place that no one would ever find until Jack Wheely broke the law one too many times, and judicial raiders were sent in to break Jack Wheely's skull, or at least a kneecap. It was while they were ransacking Jack's place that someone's boot went through a wall and there was a plastic bag inside. A plastic bag inside the wall. Clothes, lots of them, like nothing the silo had ever seen before. Gowns with sequins, fancy shoes with flimsy straps and long spikes for heels, silk robes, fancy socks, a black leather jacket, and matching black gloves. Relics. Most of them were destroyed. The silk robe, however, went to the judge, the only person who wears robes, and the jacket went home with a raider named Camille Sims after a few of the other raiders laughed and made fun of her husband, saying, That jacket would look so dope on your boy, Bobby. On your boy, Bobby.
Okay. Hugh Howey has to go away and write that short story now.
Yeah. Graham Yost replied much more practically. He put on that jacket for a reason, and that reason will be revealed in a subsequent season. So,
Oh, Graham!
I look
Stop
forward
being
to
all
that.
practical about it.
I never had questions about it in the first place, but I'm glad it's been addressed.
It's just a cool looking jacket, people. It's just a cool looking jacket.
All right. Shall we take a quick break and then jump into the feedback?
Yeah, let's.
All right. We'll be right back. All right, this is our final feedback episode for Silo Season 2. Unless a bunch more comes in, then, we're not going to rule out doing another one in the future. So do keep sharing your thoughts via woolshiftdustpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll keep talking Silo as we talk Dune as well. So this episode is especially focused on feedback from episodes 9 and 10, The Safeguard and Into the Fire, plus season 3, Hopes and Theories. And
now opening the listener feedback channel.
It's organized loosely by episode or topic, so you might hear from the same person more than once. There was a lot of mail-in feedback this week via email, so do email first to make sure you get yours in. So I pulled a bit from Discord, but not too much. And we are going to take a little step back to start after episode 8. We got a mail from Soph YB. Soph said, when Bernard first asked Lucas to crack the code, Lucas pointed out 2 words, Silo and Ali, Quinn's wife's name. I've only seen up to episode 8, and it seems like this was a red herring since it has since been established that the code is a book cipher. I wonder whether we will come back to this. I was hoping Ali would turn out to be a descendant of Allison, an ancestor of Allison, which echoes one of the Silo 18 backstories in Shift. And indeed, yeah, the story about the revolt that happened in Silo 18 140 years ago in Shift does include the little Easter egg that one of the characters has the name Allison running in her family.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I wonder the same. If Quinn's wife, I was thinking it was his daughter, if it's his wife, or was it his wife or his daughter? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Quinn's family member. Yeah, I wonder if that could be a link or just a little bone they're throwing to some of us, to the book readers. And then she said, wrong theories only. Bernard lures Sims to the orchards to kill him, but then gets attacked by a colony of rabbits descended from the one young Juliet released into the wild. Sims thinks he's victorious, but Amundsen finishes him off with a stapler. The key to the mystery door ends up being the Pez dispenser, and the Silosins float to freedom through a Willy Wonka-style magic tunnel ride on giant Pez candy-shaped Lillos, the Silo Lillos. That is my best theory so far. No, you didn't ask for these, but I have so many wrong theories I thought I'd share. Love Soph YB. Off to adopt a cat named Salvador Quinn. Hashtag humans are gonna human.
I love that. I love the idea of Bernard being killed by feral rabbits.
Descended from the one that Juliet released last season. I like the Pez dispenser love tunnel escape.
Well, it all comes back to the Pez dispenser.
Yes. Well, I mean, you weren't completely off with the Pez dispenser coming back in the finale, but yeah, please do keep sending wrong theories. We want to hear definitely everyone's wrong theories. Jean says, so we're gonna check back in on Jean's opinion, but we're tracking his hatred of the Sims and Bernard, which is hilarious. He says, man, the Sims and Bernard need to GTFOH and go clean already. Should be a team of folks trailing them every day, yelling, clean, 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 whenever they're up and about walking around the silo. Yeah. Paul Kent says, what music would I play the kids in Solo's Legacy Pad? As a vet metalhead, Led Zeppelin are great. I'd go for Let It Be the Beatles to give everyone goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this comment in the show notes, Paul, and I think it's a great little game to play. So I'm gonna go with, I made 3 selections. I'm gonna go with Hey Jude by the Beatles. I'm gonna go with Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go with something a bit more contemporary because I've been listening to it a lot lately, and I think it's great. Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish.
Okay. I would go for something that gives me heady highs. So something like maybe like Bittersweet Symphony, or I love Song for Zula by Phosphorescent. If you don't know it, look it up. I love that song. Something like that that's just like has a complexity, or even like classical music would blow their minds.
Yeah. Nice bit of late Beethoven.
Yeah. All right, so skipping now to episode 9, which episode 9 seems to be the favorite on Discord. Do you have a favorite episode this season?
I think my favorite episode. Yeah, I think it's either 9 or 10. I thought 10 was a very
Yeah, finale.
satisfying finale.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I also quite liked 4, which was Meadow's death, and also yeah, just all the stuff like getting that insight into Solo, Jimmy, and just the way like that episode 4 opened with the camera showing him just like hanging out with Juliet talking. Yeah. And also the other one I really loved was episode 6, probably particularly because it ends with Bernard finally popping the question to Lucas. Hmm. All right. So after episode 9, Ashley S. said, another thought that I'm sure Elysia loved. Lucas's mom is fine and he lied because he was a coward. Wow, I did not see that coming. I love how this show writes its characters in such realistic ways. No one is 100% altruistic and no one is 100% evil. Okay, Bernard might be close. What do you think?
No, I got to push back on that a little bit. I don't think Bernard is close to being 100%
No?
evil because in the
Mm.
end he does,
He
even though
cares
he
about.
goes about showing it in a very
Mm-hmm.
cack-handed, very unnecessary way, he does care about the people of the silo, and arguably he demonstrates that. That's the last thing he demonstrates because I think he does save Juliet in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. As far as where would you put Lucas on the Sims 9 scale at the end of the season?
3.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think ultimately he does the right thing, but
Mm-hmm.
he can never be a 1 in
Mm-hmm.
my eyes because he did take Bernard Schilling to start with. He did become Bernard's shadow for a little while, so he was at least tempted by the
Yeah. I
dark
mean,
side.
if Bernard came and was like, you can either go die in the mines or you can live in this awesome library and break codes, like I am taking the job. I blame him not a bit for that.
I guess, that's probably true, but I'd still put him at a 3.
Okay. All right. After episode 9, Skatuni said, such a strong episode. So nice to have a few mysteries tied up and in such interesting ways. I certainly wasn't expecting a happy ending between Solo and the others in Silo 17. I didn't particularly like Sims as a character last season. He felt a bit one note, but he's so much better this season. I am a little confused about the timeline of the rebellion. We know Solo was 12 years old when it happened, and then sometime later, the parents got into the vault. Eder said her mother was a baby at the time, so does that put Solo at 50, at about 50, and the 25-year timeline is just not correct? And yeah, just to clarify, um, even when I said I would said it would be at least 25 years, but I knew it was going to be more than that. So yeah, so we know that the Silo 17 rebellion happened when Solo was about 12. So if he's about 50 now, it was like nearly 40 years earlier. And yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get confirmation from Hope that it was when her mom was a baby. So
I mean, I do like that scene that little scene in episode 10 where Jimmy is remembering it, and he
uh-huh.
says, "My parents would have been younger than I am now."
Yeah, I'm older
I
than
thought
they were.
that was a really touching little moment, and the way Steve
Yeah.
Zahn delivered the line as well was just heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah. That whole thing was very well staged and everything too. Yeah. Skatuni continues. I do wish the other characters in Silo 17 had been introduced a little earlier. Definitely could have skipped some of the time Juliet spent fixing things to do that. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. This was on the timeline for the books, I have to say, but I understand what you're saying there. As a viewer, we already knew Solo was a child at the time of the rebellion and that the numbers in the classroom were codes to the vault, but the show still did a good job of building on those reveals to still make it reveals to the viewer, too. Solo is Russell's son. They got into the vault. I saw this criticism a bit on Reddit, and I don't really agree with it, that the writers give you the tools to get part of the way there, but you aren't just waiting for the characters to make the same realization. Oh, I see. So Skatuni's saying they saw on Reddit people saying that that they weren't surprises, I guess. But yeah, I agree that you have the tools to figure it out. I don't think everyone does figure it out, but it is then satisfying when it's confirmed and you get additional information.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. All right, Dan G says, I see Camille and Robert Sims as worse than Bernard. Bernard is a bad dude and has evil tones to him, but he does know the truth of what happens if everyone goes outside. He knows that Silo 18 just ends up like Silo 17 did. The Sims are deciding what to do based on who they think will win the conflict and not about what they believe is best for the silo. If they side with the rebellion, and it looks like they plan to, again, this was episode 9, and the rebellion succeeds, their next move is to try to take control and run the silo. Well, you get your internet points, Dan. um, in defense of Audrey, I think that Audrey serves as a reminder for what their life has been like since birth. They live in the remnants of a war zone. The one other person they know is alive, Solo, they refer to as the killer. Also, if their family is who led the rebellion, then who knows the lore that's been passed down to them? I'm sure the stories that have been told and passed down paint a rather heroic picture of their family and a rather grim one of any outsiders. Yeah, I'm assuming their family did not lead the rebellion, because they stayed behind. They didn't go outside.
Yes, that would make sense.
But still, yeah, I think that still is a good point that this is a thing they make a big deal of in the books that, I mean, the kids kind of, they thought that their parents were kind of mean and violent. So, yeah, and that was just kind of the way things had gotten with the people who were left in Silo 17 after the Silo death.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and now we reach the finale, and obviously this is the bulk of the feedback. So, Kale on Blue Sky, just Kale, says, Elysia and Luke, I'm really hoping everyone's loins are okay after the Foxy Noxy content we received in the Silo finale. There are some gifts I need. Yeah, we didn't hear from our loin-afflicted friend Christina this time. So, Christina, we want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Christina, if you could just check in, we need to make sure that your loins are okay.
Yes. Kel says, my partner, non-book, took my hand and said, don't fall in love. He might not survive the episode. And I couldn't believe that he was the one saying it. Luckily, we were both wrong. And then he totally called the Pez origin story before it happened, which was the best surprise for this book fan. The fact that readers and non-readers can watch this show together and both enjoy it is a testament to the brilliance of the storytelling team.
Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And checking back in with Ashley S. after the finale. Wow, I feel like they played around with the quote-unquote big question, what happened to the world, for 2 seasons, and while it's not at all surprising, I'm fabulously happy with this reveal. That harsh cut to normal life on Earth was crazy and totally unexpected. While I'm frustrated because I always want to know more, I'm pretty satisfied with what was answered, left unanswered, and where the storyline is headed. For example, I'm so glad the hand signals mechanical uses became an integral part of the plot and rebellion. I noticed the hand signals in season 1 and was disappointed they never became a plot point, so was thrilled to see that was what fooled Bernard in the end. Yeah, I noticed. It's true. They did use them in season 1. I kind of forgot about that, but they also called attention. Shirley mentioned it in like episode 2 of this season. She's like, "Oh, I'm teaching so and so the hand signals," and I was like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
going to come back."
it was very much it was a good example of planting and payoff.
Yeah, because it was like at the time I noted it, but then I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ashley says those character dynamics in Silo 18 were wild, and how come Camille gets to stay in the vault? My partner has had a side thought that she might be a founder descendant. Oh. All good and fun things to think about. I wanted to sleep for a few days and rewatch the whole season again. So what do you think about that? Do you think Camille or anyone else is a founder descendant?
Well, there has to be a reason why the algorithm is allowing Camille to stay, but not Robert or Anthony. But then again, if she was a descendant, Anthony would be allowed to stay.
Right, if that were the logic, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the way I figured, I'd been saying for the longest time that I think she would make a better Shadow than Robert.
Oh,
And
definitely.
and the algorithm can see everything in the silo, so
Yeah. I mean,
my assumption was just like it was. I mean, Robert just before this was holding a gun in Lucas's face. Like that's not who
I do,
anyone wants in charge.
I do love Lucas's mum going, is there any chance you could put the gun away? No, there's
No.
absolutely no chance. That's,
Okie dokie.
yeah,
just thought I'd try a thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Um Yeah, so then Ashley added later, I've rewatched the last 10 minutes of the finale 3 times so far, and oh, there's just so much. The congressman says that he serves the quote unquote fighting 15th district of Georgia, so I was curious to look up where in the state that is located. Right now, there's only 14 districts in Georgia, according to Google. So, wow, even more juicy
Ah,
tidbits. Yeah.
so this takes place at least after the 2030 census. Then we have
Mm.
a timeline
After the why 2030? That's
because
be
US census are diennial, aren't they? They take place every 10 years.
Yeah, but we haven't had 2030 yet. Maybe the 15th is invented this year. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, but it's
No,
sure
but
certainly.
the last census was 2020. The next one will
Yeah.
be 20.
Oh, you're saying at least in the 2030 census. Yeah.
Yeah, because congressional apportionment won't change until
Right.
after the next census.
Oh, gotcha.
God, I am such a politics geek.
That's why we love to have you here. But yeah, also we got the hint where Helen said to Daniel, her date, she said, she said the word date was something that grandparents would say, and I just used it. So they're at least
Yeah.
saying that I would be grandparent age.
So yeah, I think you and John were right in saying that this is not meant to be now. This is meant to be at some point in the not too distant future. My sort of headcanon at the moment is 2050, roughly.
Okay. All right. And Ashley finishes this message with the Pez dispenser edition. Yay! We finally know where the ducky came from. Does this mean Helen is going to make it into the silo project? I have more thoughts, but I don't want to throw them all out there just yet. Like, well, Ashley, please do keep throwing your thoughts out and we'll catch them.
Oh, I meant to look it up, but I never got around to it. Is the University of Colorado's mascot a
It
duck?
was wasn't University of Colorado, it was University of where was but yeah,
Was it
it is
Oregon? It was somewhere in the
Oregon.
Pacific
It was Oregon.
Northwest.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
is because he said that earlier too. He said his was a bulldog and hers was a duck, and then he gave her the ducky Pez
Yeah,
dispenser.
and the mascot is a duck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Howard J says a bit early, even before the pod is out. This was an emotional roller coaster. From when Sir Jorah gave his life to thinking they really thought Walker was a rat, Knox and his perfect hair. The barrel was cool. Juliet gaining some empathy. I cried with sadness and with happiness for 30 minutes. I could have done with a still suit. Spoiler. Do we think Juliet saved Bernard? Hence the fire suit. The ending. Non-book readers will go ape. I can't wait. Yours in expectancy H.
Yeah. Well, I've already said I don't think Bernard is alive. I'd be very surprised if Bernard was alive.
But do you think he saved Juliet on purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, I think it was an emotional ride. Did you go ape, non-book reader?
If I had been in a condition to go ape, I would have gone ape. But yeah, the first time I watched, it's like, okay, these.
You said it felt like a trip because you had
these
the
drugs
drug.
are stronger than I thought. These drugs are even stronger than I thought they were. Where are we? Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon says, Brandon here again. I am blown away. My heart rate was at 110 the entire time. I just loved it. I definitely didn't see the hand signal twist coming. That was awesome. Bernard was hilarious. The AI straight up rejecting Sims made me cackle, and the Solo and Juliet hug were well earned. Yeah, that was. What did you think of the hug?
Yeah, it was a well earned hug, but it's like
His first hug in 40 years, pretty much.
like no. But also somebody needs to come up with somebody needs to edit the algorithm talking to Robert Sims, and somebody needs to add like a womp womp sound effect.
you go, Camille, stay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Brennan says, I think it's obvious Juliet will survive via the firefighter suit, and I think Bernard will live, but as a burn victim, sadly. Kind of like him at the very end. I don't know. Kind of like him at the... Oh, I guess Brandon's saying that he came around to Bernard a little bit.
Yeah, kind of liked him at the end.
Yeah. Elysia, I know from your What If coverage that you will hate this too. I couldn't stand when the Raiders didn't listen to Lucas for 2 seconds and just beat him to a pulp. Yeah. What do we always say? Clear communication.
Clear communication.
I must say, one thing I really didn't like is as soon as Dr. Nichols truly believes his daughter is alive, he immediately offers himself as sacrifice. As a father myself, I would personally change my mindset to stay alive as long as possible and find her at that point. I don't know, threw me off a bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that comment. I can definitely see why that would hit wrong.
Yeah. Either way, phenomenal television, great acting, great twists, and most of all, great coverage from you guys. See you in season 3, Brandon. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon.
All right, we got a voicemail actually from Paul. Should we check in with Paul's finale thoughts?
Hello, Silizans. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. Anyway, what a thrilling and emotionally charged finale. Rebecca Ferguson and Tim Robbins were really outstanding. The sign language twist from Martha really did make me jump up in my seat. Then Dr. Nichols obviously making the ultimate sacrifice made me gasp. And I kind of nearly crying, actually. Anyway, then of course Lucas never ceases to amaze us with his now kickboxing skills. He also had a wonderful mother. I thought she's really, really cool. I did wonder when we'd see the Pez dispenser again. Who are those guys on a date in DC, I wonder? Well, as a book reader I do know, but I'm sworn to secrecy. The guiding expertise from Elysia, Luke and Abby in the podcasts and the buzz of the Discord community make the show even more eventful and compelling. You all deserve a tin of Snickers ice cream from the Legacy Room. Solo will be around shortly. Can't wait for season 3 and the even bigger shift in gear. Take care. Best wishes.
See what you did there. So Shift is the name of the second book, which is going to be the focus of the 3rd season for anyone who didn't get that.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That was really nice. If Bernard is dead, I think it is worth taking a moment to sort of reflect on the sheer quality of performance that Tim Robbins has given over the last 2 seasons. I mean, on one hand, you can say, it's Oscar winner Tim Robbins, just Tim Robbins being Tim Robbins. But I think Bernard must be a difficult character to play because it would be so easy to turn him into a mustache-twirling villain. And Tim Robbins and the writers have always made sure that there was more to him than that. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly in this episode, where you see Bernard's personality start to come apart in the course of the episode, I think Tim Robbins did that really well. I love that little maniacal laugh when Martha gets the countdown slightly wrong. because you can just see like the relief pour out of Bernard, and it's like, oh no, he's actually going to succeed here, isn't he? And then boom.
Yeah. No, I appreciate and thank you actually, Paul, for sending a voicemail. I encourage more people to do the same. It's a lot of fun to, really genuinely get to talk to each other. Michael Martinez says, "Hi, Elysia. This is my first time writing to you. I've been listening to your podcast since season 1, episode 1, and gives compliments. Thank you so much." Michael says, "After each episode, I make a beeline to your podcast and can't wait to hear. I'm a non-book reader." Oh, that's very kind, Michael. And so Michael sent some bullet point reactions. He says, episode 10 podcast reactions. Bernard, says, John was good, but I missed Luke's non-book POV. And also, I look forward to hearing Luke's responses and speculations to your questions.
Thanks, Michael.
He says, "You wondered what Hope was painting. I noticed that Jules looked at an item in front of Hope. The table surface was small, which makes me think it was a cloth with the message, 'Don't go outside,' that Jules held up to the camera." And yeah, a couple people brought this up, that they were probably painting the 'Don't go outside' that she held up, which makes total sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Dr. Nichols, "I was crushed to see the doctor die, although he gave a touching farewell and had a pivotal scene in episode 10. Yeah. Questions. I've included my responses / theories as a non-book reader, wondering if any are correct or not. Well, I'm not going to tell you if they are, but but let's listen to the questions. Will Jules return to Silo 17? It's doubtful. I think Jules will stay in Silo 18. What are your thoughts?
I hope she does, because I don't like the thought of Jimmy and the kids being left in Silo 17 for reasons I sort of talked about earlier. I don't think in the long run that Silo 17 is livable. So I hope they find a way out.
Yeah, I do wonder. I know what happens in the books, but I have reason to think they might be doing it differently to condense things. So we'll see. We'll see. Will Solo / Jimmy find a way to communicate with Jules in Silo 18? Yes, I think the algorithm in Silo 18 will help Jules to communicate with Solo / Jimmy. What do you think? Do you think the algorithm will help Jules?
Why would the algorithm do that?
Well, the algorithm did say that it wanted to help Sims save the silo. So maybe if there was a reason to do that, maybe it would be linked to that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The algorithm comes across as a deeply sinister force to me.
Michael says, "Do all the silos have a tunnel at the bottom?" Yes, I think they all have a tunnel. And I would be inclined to agree. I would just assume in general they have the same layout. Right? Or do you disagree?
No, they would have all been built to the same. Well, we know that actually Silo 17 has a slightly different layout.
How so?
I thought we'd sort of established that the sheriff's office in Silo 17 was a bit closer to the top of the silo than it was in Silo 18.
No, it's always on the top floor.
Okay.
They have different decor.
Okay.
But it's maybe you're thinking of the IT is much higher in the TV show versus the books.
Okay, yeah. That yes. Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Michael says, "Are the silos interconnected?" Yes, through the tunnel at the bottom, the algorithm, and the IT server room. Now, I know you think the same.
Yeah, Michael, we are on the same page here, my friend. We're on the same page. Team, all the silos are linked.
I mean, some of that I know the answer to. The tunnel is a new addition. I have a theory what it is, but I will not tell you, obviously. We talked about it in the spoilercast. Will Solo / Jimmy venture out to Silo 18? I think that would be cool to have him visit Jules. Maybe he will find a way to use his tunnel. Well, yeah, that depends heavily on whether the tunnel is a thing that connects them. Can the silo, but also if there is a tunnel at the bottom of his, which I assume there is, it's heavily flooded.
Yes, and it will be for quite some time.
Yeah. Can the silos communicate / interact with each other? I think it's possible, and the algorithm is the key.
I don't know about the algorithm being the key, but me and you are definitely on the same page with them being able to communicate, Michael.
Okay. Are there separate algorithms for each silo? I think there's one gigantic program that customizes the interactions with each silo. What do you think?
Yes, I would lean towards that.
Okay. Who are the founders? Given the tease at the end of episode 10, I think that the federal government staff / leaders are the founders. So, like the US government people became the founders.
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers.
Would be logical people to build the silos, I guess.
Yes.
Did Jules and Bernard die in the fire? No, their suits protected them. So he thinks maybe they both survived. Jules
Okay.
had the fire suit, though, and
Yeah.
Bernard had an outside suit, but it was not specifically a fire suit.
Yeah, Jules has survived because she's wearing the fire suit. I don't
And
know
plot
why.
armor. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and the plot armor. Yeah, the several inches thick plot armor. And I don't see why Bernard would have survived just wearing the normal going outside suit, because the whole isn't part of the point of having that decontamination process to stop a person who is being sent out to clean from like going halfway up the tunnel and then turning around and coming back.
I mean, the decontamination process. Maybe there's some secondary thing, but ostensibly it's to burn off any bad air that might have leaked in when they open the locks.
Yeah, I mean, but I agree with you. That's probably its primary purpose. But I also thought it was there as a sort of safeguard in case a person being sent out to clean change their mind.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know they made a bigger deal of it earlier in the books so that it wasn't a surprise when Juliet came back, like I said. So that is slightly different, but I'm guessing that was just like a compression for, you have limited screen time to give all these details. Yeah. So I don't know if anything's changed. Yeah. Has the algorithm been monitoring everyone all along for hundreds of years? Yes, I suspect the algorithm was installed when the silos were being built.
Well, I would go further. I think the algorithm might have manipulated the founders, the humans, into building the silos in the first place.
Okay. How does the algorithm monitor the inhabitants of each silo? I suspect it's intertwined into the wiring throughout each silo, utilizing the cameras, computers, mirrors, etc. Yeah. Well, we know, that there are cameras behind some of the mirrors, at least, because we saw that last season. So for sure, the algorithm has access to any surveillance in the silo that the humans are looking at too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is Silo 18 the last surviving silo with 10,000 people? Yes, I suspect the algorithm killed the other silos or the inhabitants killed themselves. Ooh, what do you think?
Ooh, that is a spicy meatball. Ooh. I'm gonna have to chew on that for a bit, Michael. That is an interesting thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. What is Camille's role in Silo 18? She will kill Bernard after she sees Bernard kill her husband.
Well,
if Bernard survives, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will Lucas save the day in Silo 18? No, he will be killed. Oh, seems like this show likes to kill off characters. Damn.
Will he save the day? No.
No, he's going to die. Oh. What did Lucas whisper to Bernard? The algorithm told Lucas that all the other silos failed. They are the last one, and now Silo 18 will be killed by the safeguard. Woof, dark.
I mean, is that what Luke? Might that be what Lucas is referring to when he says the key fob doesn't light up because there's a problem? It lights up because it's over.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
He seemed to think that they were going to all die in their silo, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know that there seems to be the way they cut away, like when he was deciphering the code from Salvador Quinn, the way they cut away when he was talking to the algorithm, the way they cut away when he was whispering in Bernard's ear. This seems to suggest there may be something else that he found out from the code and or the algorithm that
Yeah.
viewers aren't being told about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would also explain, just the fact that Meadows, Bernard, and Lucas were just, as soon as they heard whatever, it's one thing to say.
They were out of there. They were done.
Yeah. It was like, all right, well, I guess I give up on everything. Yeah. And says, big fan of your podcast and the show, Michael Martinez. Thank you, Michael. That was a really fun list of questions to go through.
It was. I particularly like the sort of bullet point staccato. Question, answer, question, answer.
Yeah, makes it very easy to talk about. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Tony C says, hi again. Enjoyed your episode in the season finale. I'm thinking Bernard is definitely gone, but has redeemed himself if he saves Juliet. I agree with you that it's a shame they killed Papa Nichols off before he knew for sure his daughter was alive. I hope we haven't seen the last of Solo. I loved that scene where he saw his parents and then seeing himself in the mirror and realizing he was older than them. Yeah, that seems to be a favorite. Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't continue with Steve Zahn next season, considering his character is clearly alive and well with those kids.
Mm.
As for Bernard, knowing the who but not the why, I'm thinking CIA, but hoping against hope it's not. Too easy an answer. Okay. Thoughts? CIA?
No, I mean, as far as we know, the rest of the US government ceased to exist, so it would be really impressive if the agency continues to exist in some form. Like I say, I think the who is the algorithm.
Okay. I found the Washington, D.C. very interesting, if jarring. The appearance of the Pez dispenser was brilliant. It's hard to know, though, how that scene fits the Silo timeline. Apart from the quote-unquote dating reference, it doesn't seem too far in the future. All in all, I'm hooked and excited about what's to come and fighting myself against spoilers. All the best, Tony Curran. P.S. Another podcast I listen to seems to believe the Washington, D.C. scene is a flashback. I'm more confused than ever. My initial thought, and I'm still leaning that way, is that it's a flash forward, and they'll be investigating the silos. On the other hand, it could be a flashback, as it's unlikely only Georgia suffered whatever calamity caused the silos to be built. Unless, of course, it's some vast sociological experiment. I'm going around in circles like those silo stairs now. Either way, I can't wait for season 3. I hope I have the patience not to read the books. At least I've got Severance to keep my head wrecked in the meantime.
I certainly don't think it was a flash forward.
No.
I'd be very, very surprised if it was a flash forward. I don't think it was a flashback either. I think it was just opening up a new plot line.
Do you think it's at the same time?
No, I think it's in the past. But I don't think it's not the characters in the silo flashing back to a particular point. It's just,
well, it's certainly not the characters we've seen.
Yeah.
So you think, I mean, how do you think that this story might tie to what we've seen so far?
Well, like I say, I see. I'm now very much on team. This is a sociological experiment, but not aliens. Artificial intelligence. What I think the artificial intelligence has done is it's convinced the US government to build these silos. Now, I was trying to think how and why it's done that. The how is, I think this is part of a project to I think it was meant as an experiment to see how humans would survive, extraterrestrial travel. If people had been put on colony ships for a long time, I think the silos might have been designed to test how well people could survive in that kind of environment. Because think about it, the silo is in a lot of respects similar to a spaceship. It's a closed environment.
Yeah.
It's a sealed environment, end to end. So I think that's how the silos got built. I think the algorithm as a singularity, as a fully conscious piece of artificial intelligence, has been sort of running this experiment with the people in the silos just to see how the human brain, the human mind works. It's trying to understand. It's going a bit Star Trek the Motion Picture. I think it's trying to understand its creator.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on to Scatoony says, I really enjoyed the finale, but I must say I'm not a fan of the cliffhanger in Silo 18. Although credit to Bernard, he actually tried to save Juliet. Bernard was great fun to watch this episode, giggling on his sofa. I also enjoyed Bernard saying he knows the who, but not the why, and we immediately cut to the storyline, which presumably will explain both. Yeah, do you think that? Do you think this?
It's such a good line. It's such a good line. It's just like giving you a little bit of hope and then taking it away. Giving you a little bit of information, taking it away.
Do you think that the scene we got at the end, that story is going to explain the who and why?
I mean, I think Helen the reporter and the congressman might turn out to be like the Woodward and Bernstein of this particular story. You know, trying to unpick why these silos are being built and who's building them.
Yeah.
But crucially, they won't be able to succeed, or if they do succeed, they're both going to get killed.
Okay.
Because if they reveal it to the wider world, the game is up. And clearly the game isn't up.
Yeah.
So either they don't succeed or they end up dead in a ditch somewhere.
There was a good point brought up by someone who said, why would Helen think that a junior congressman would know this information? So I think that's a good question to keep in mind too.
Yeah, good point.
Scatoony says, generally just a very well-constructed and fast-paced episode with the one caveat that I didn't like the cliffhanger. Not a book reader, but it's the sort of cliffhanger where they obviously, hopefully, aren't going to unceremoniously kill off the main character, so it seems pointless. Would love to hear more about the changes to the book, but I think that going on the wiki would be a sure way of being spoiled. Yeah, avoid the wiki.
don't go on the wiki.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think that was quite well handled because, we don't really need to speculate whether Juliet survived. The speculation is, did Bernard survive?
Right. It's true. Yeah, we can accept she had the fire suit. She's Juliet. She's Rebecca Ferguson. Yeah. She's number one on the call sheet. I mean, although, Bernard is Tim Robbins, so.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, Sub-Zero says, based on the cafe scene, they were hinting at nuclear war, which would explain why it's toxic outside, and it could explain why they built the silos to preserve humanity, but it doesn't explain why it all feels like a social experiment. Why would you play with people's lives like that if there are so few remaining? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, as I say, if they do the storyline that there was a nuclear war, so we built the silos for the survivors, I'm going to be really disappointed because, like, not to get all sort of IR scholar about this, it simply wouldn't work. You couldn't do it, or I would think it would be extremely difficult to do. So if they go down that road, unless they explain how you could have a nuclear war and then build the silos really well, I'm going to be really disappointed if that's the end of the story. On the other hand, like I say, I think what you could have a situation is there is a nuclear war, the silos have been built beforehand for ostensibly for a different purpose, and they're therefore there and available for the survivors to move into.
Okay. All right. And Sub-Zero says, I'm sure book readers are just biting their tongues right now. And yep, I'm just going to keep biting my tongue. He says, was listening to the pod and John identified Camille as amoral. And I completely agree. She's not inherently good or bad. She's driven by self-interest. I'm curious to see how that translates now that she's handed the keys to the kingdom. Thoughts on that?
See, this is the interesting point because I would agree, but does that self-interest, is that self-interest wide enough to encompass Robert and Anthony as well?
Yes, I think that's her self.
I suspect that it is.
Yeah. Sub-Zero says, I took a philosophy class in college where we spent the entire quarter studying the professor's own book, which was a discourse on amorality and how being amoral can be a viable way to live. I don't remember much of the details, but essentially his argument was that most, if not all, existing morality codes are fundamentally flawed. They are often constructed in such a way as to help those in power remain in power. The author posited that it's possible to not be beholden to any moral codes and still be able to make choices that are socially accepted as right or good. It was a fascinating class. I just wish I could remember the professor's name or book. Um,
Oh, that is such a massive red flag. That is such a no-no in my book. Any professor that assigns their own work as the core text,
oh,
run,
I
get as
mean, I don't
far
know.
away from that as you can.
I don't know that I agree with that as long as there's other stuff. But I it does remind me of I took psychology courses in college from a professor who declared himself, he told us he's like, I'm a sociopath. Um so he's basically saying, I'm not compelled to do the right thing by empathy. And he talked very openly about like how do so not all sociopaths, a lot of them just lead normal lives, and it often becomes like a game. He said for himself of of identifying like this is the most productive way to behave, because he's realized if he behaves in a way that's good for society that also benefits him. It just seems similar to me.
Okay.
Mm. And Sub-Zero says, my hope for Camille is that she ends up making decisions that will benefit the greater good, even if she doesn't feel any moral obligations to do so. And yeah, I think that's going to be the question. If it comes down to between her family or the silo as a whole, what would she do?
I mean, for the moment, those two things are aligned, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, should they ever? Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick pause here. And when we come back, we're going to continue discussing the finale and more silo thoughts. Okay, so Gempactian says, as someone who has only read the first book and will probably read/listen to the second before the third season, this is all gripping stuff. The cliffhanger is actually pretty wild for me. I feel like at least some of my guesses are coming true, which I haven't shared with anyone. I've enjoyed the show more than the books, though both are good, and can't wait for season 3 to get here. Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see why some might prefer one or the other. Duve71 says, Silo as a series goes from strength to strength. Like John, I devoured the trilogy of books after Alicia's recommendations, and whilst it stopped the wild speculation I had while watching season 1, I've been really pleasantly surprised with the changes they have made in many areas. The legacy, so cool. The mysterious tunnel. Do we assume every silo has one or just 18? Well, yeah, we talked about that. The fleshing out of Bernard. Robbins needs an Emmy. And Sims, a fantastic study in thwarted ambition. The addition of Judge Meadows, we barely knew thee, and Camille, who we thought initially a Lady Macbeth, has developed into one of the most nuanced protagonists in Silo 18. Watching it with my wife has been fantastic, as she hasn't read the book, so I have my own Elysia and Luke style conversations. Plus, my youngest daughter is now a committed Silozin. With some minor nitpicks, I'm just going to have to rewatch the season to properly take it all in. All bodes well for season 3, which should have a different tone to what has come before, and it's brilliant that the showrunners will get to close off their adaptation over the next 2 seasons. More mysteries abound, and I, for one, can't wait to uncover them. As always, very well put, Doof.
Yeah.
The TCS says, just finished the Silo 18 part of the podcast, and I'm thinking right now, Juliet lives, Bernard dies, but I don't see him saving her. I thought she was in a fire suit. I actually think she will be trying to save him, so if he lives, it's because she shielded him and there are no flames on the very bottom of the wall. I mean, I thought he did jump to at least he chased her into the lock, knowing the fire was going to go off to try to stop her because she had just said, "I have a way to save the silo."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bernard knows about the algorithm, but not that it's so all-encompassing in its spying ability. He doesn't know someone is watching the Watcher so fully. I don't think he knows about the safeguard, and that's what Lucas tells him. Yeah, I don't know.
He
I'm
should know about the safeguard as head of IT.
I think he at least does know that the algorithm sees everything because, like, for instance, we saw when Bernard was with Lucas, he got that message. There's a Delta emergency in the central shaft. So he knows the algorithm's monitoring the rest of the silo.
Yeah.
I'm still undecided if the algorithm told Lucas anything else beyond confirming the safeguard is real. Maybe that they are super close to using it or what could trigger it other than him telling people about it. I think just knowing about the safeguard and the fact that the information couldn't be shared would make a shadow quit or drink or get people to forget. Disclaimer, all evidence indicates that my prediction skills are pretty bad. I think you've done a decent job in previous messages. Yeah. Oh, I'll see. And I already said that I agreed. I think that there's something they're not saying about what the algorithm said to Lucas. Jean says, okay, so here we go. We're ready to check back in on Jean's feelings about
Come on.
especially the family Sims.
Come on, John. Let the hatred flow through you.
Well, Silo. It seems you've managed to give me everything that I wanted and while also giving me more to look forward to. At Mr. Sims, you, sir, you have been deemed not worthy of the vault. That moment sent me into a laughing and coughing, dealing with a cold fit that I've not experienced in a little bit. The look on Mr. Sims' face at that moment could be my fave of the series. Algorithm told Mr. Sims, you ain't got to go home, but you do have to get the F up out of here. LMFAO.
You got no game, bitch. Hit the bricks.
I also think that this was Mrs. Sims' end game, whether it was her or him, for one of them to have control of the silo and its secrets. Mr. Sims thought that was going to be him, but alas, lol. But I don't think this is it's going to end well for either of them by the time it's all said and done. Listening to the pod, and as Elysia stated, Mrs. Sims has a lot of haters. I realize that if Mrs. Sims has one hater left in this world, then that hater is me. If Mrs. Sims has no haters left on Earth, then I went to live on Mars. Jean, we love. I mean, I'm still a Camille defender, but your hatred amuses me endlessly. Keep it coming.
I love the passion, John. I love the passion.
Yeah, and Jean is. You can listen to he and I kicking around our thoughts about Marvel and DC stuff on the Lorehounds podcast, especially. So we've been releasing some recent episodes and more to come. Rebecca Fan says, regarding Into the Fire, the scenes with Juliet and Solo were my favorite, especially their final. Steve Zahn as Solo stole every scene, but the last scene with Solo and Juliet was incredibly moving. If I recall correctly, that last scene is the one Zahn spoke of when he and Rebecca became a bit emotionally overwhelmed as they were both so into their characters. Oh, yeah, when they in interviews about it, yeah. I loved, so in interviews, basically, they said, the two of them said that, that last scene was really, like, because they had been filming by themselves in that silo, because the kids only come in at the end. So, and they weren't filming all the scenes with, everyone else did that before that, all the Silo 18 stuff. So it was just the two of them doing this for months. So it was like a real emotional bond connection, I think.
Cool.
I loved Juliet's moment with the kids. It makes me wonder how she will react to all that's happened in 18. Speaking of which, I got goosebumps when she walked over the hill. The reactions from Walk, Shirley, and Knox were some of the show's most satisfying. Poor Dr. Nichols. Sad face, yeah. Bernard's last F was gone, LOL. Tim Robbins made Bernard the MVP of 18. Bernard and Meadows. When he spoke to her corpse, one of the best scenes in the season. Bernard and Lucas, exceptional character development. Yeah. I mean, if that's the end of Tim Robbins, he certainly delivered maybe my favorite performance I've ever seen from him. Maybe. I mean, obviously there's like Shawshank Redemption and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna say it's up there with Shawshank,
yeah.
but I don't think it. I think Shawshank is still his best work.
Yeah, that's fair. But definitely one of my favorites of his. Walks, gotcha, smile. Lucas went from a mousy little coward to a man with conviction to losing his last F2. Great character. Yeah. Loved seeing Lucas's arc this season. Can't wait to see what they do with him next season. The culmination of Billings' slow burn arc made me love the character more. Aw. The cliffhanger reminded me of the ending to The Walking Dead season 6, where Negan killed the audience. I dropped The Walking Dead after that. Ugh. Yeah, I don't know if if you watched The Walking Dead.
No, I'm not a huge fan of like zombies as a. It's not really my cup of tea.
I am a zombie person, and I definitely I watched for a while past that, and actually, Avi Nash, who plays Lucas, he was on the show after that. I think he joined not long after that whole thing. But there's this infamous. I won't spoil the thing; it's a big thing. But there's an infamous scene with this character Negan and a bat, and it definitely pissed a lot of people off.
Okay.
Rebecca Fan says, I have not read the books, but I know Shift is an origin story, so the last 10 minutes weren't a shock. I don't have an opinion on the characters, but I look forward to seeing more of them in season 3. Yeah. Into the Fire was a great episode, and a lot pays off, but I'm still conflicted by the season overall. I love how all the little things throughout the season tied together, and I never thought the season was slow, but some arcs needed more breathing room. Juliet and Solo, Billings, the kids in 17, while other arcs and characters, I believe less would have been more. Oh, I'm interested to hear what you think there was too much of. I'm anxious for season 3, but concerned that Juliet will be sidelined again. Well, she's back in Silo 18, so I think. And also, we found out, I read an interview I talked about it in the last episode and in the interview with Sal Calleros, that Graham Yost dropped some hints about season 3. And a hint that he dropped is that there is a book character who has been gender swapped for the show. And the reason for the gender swap was something about the dynamics between this character and Juliet they want to add to. So to me, that tells me that they are planning to find more ways to center her in the story.
Okay, interesting.
All right, we have a few more people who are iffy on some of the things from the season and the finale. Ken W said only 19 minutes into the Safeguard, which was episode 9, and I hate what they've done to the kids. Didn't like some of. Oh wait, no, sorry, that was episode 9, right? The Safeguard.
Yeah.
Didn't like some of the other changes, Walker and Solo especially, but this one has gone too far. Maybe because I've never had a series or film on screen so close to me finishing the books. Anyway, going to watch the rest of the episode and see if it'll turn me around. Keep up the great work. Yeah, thanks, Ken. And we'll hear from Ken after the finale, and I can already spoiler. Ken was much more happy with the finale, but yeah, it goes to show, a lot of people loved episode 9, but then there are some people chafing about some book stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I get that. Jeff N says, Hi, Elysia and Luke. I've really enjoyed your episodes along with the spoilercast episodes. The novels and short stories compose my second favorite book series after Stephen King's Dark Tower series, which, by the way, side note, is my sister's favorite book series, Elysia says. And Jeff says, and that's why I've been so hopeful for the show. I'm trying very, very hard to enjoy the Apple series, but more and more it feels like very dumb television. The narrative presented on screen is so different from the books, it's become largely unrecognizable. There's so much exposition and so many seemingly pointless changes to the story, it feels like those responsible for the show believe their audience is too dumb for the much smarter story told in the books. I'm struggling mightily to keep watching and avoid the pitfalls of comparing it to other shows, but I'm getting tired of being treated like I'm so dumb, especially compared to the brilliant storytelling and showing versus telling of Severance. I enjoy your work thoroughly and suspect it's a major part of why I'm still watching at this point. Please don't stop. Frustrated yet appreciative, Jeff. So, what do you think, Luke?
I this is probably one for you to take. So obviously I don't have anything to
Mhm.
compare the show to. But I've certainly never felt that the show was talking down to me or treating me like I'm dumb.
No. And well, I am famously I'm more forgiving of book changes in general, unless unless people who listen to like my Doom Prophecy coverage might not think that, but I am in general very um forgiving of that, and in this case certainly. And I think a lot of that maybe things that are not necessarily dumbing down, but just kind of, I mean, on the one hand, they're streamlining things, on the other hand, they're like building things out by, in making this richer cast of characters with
Yeah,
people
and
like,
I think when you've read any book series, you
mm-hmm,
have your ideas about how an adaptation should go. Because in a sense, when you're reading the book, you're adapting it in your own head. You're
uh-huh,
painting images with words. So oftentimes, it's not that what you're saying is wrong, Ken, but it's just that what is on the screen may not fit the way you would have done it.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the way I approach that, or probably the way you've heard me approach it on this podcast, is that I just first I'm like, well, that's a change. Let me think about why they might have made this change. Like what practical thing? Like an actor isn't available. They need to reuse the same set. They, screen time, budget, all these things. Um, and for me, that helps. It becomes like a puzzle then of how is it actually physically, feasibly, financially possible to get this adaptation on screen? And then I guess I become a lot more forgiving of changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the changes I quite like, actually, like the building out of the side characters. I mean, Meadows was one of my favorite characters this season. Camille, Kathleen, none of these characters exist in the book. Um, but yeah, we know we want to definitely represent both sides. So we have one more on the more negative side. J Hale X End says, I feel like Papa Nichols' death was a weaker part of the writing. The I need to stay behind because the remote trigger slash timer slash fuse slash whatever isn't working is a pretty overused trope. I guess I both love and hate that the reason was something so dumb as it fell out on the way here. I wish they had motivated Papa Nichols' decision a little more. I think they tried to use his knowledge and that his daughter might still be alive as a motivator to sacrifice himself, but I just wasn't convinced that that wouldn't have worked the other way and made him want to live to help her. He also sees himself as the only one taking care of the folks below the barricade, so what happens without him? I would hate to lose Hank too, but he seems more aligned with the plight of the down deeper. But alas, we'll miss you, Sir Jorah.
I mean, I don't know this, but I suspect that there's probably I suspect there's maybe a reason for it. It may just be that Ian Glenn has got other projects that he
Mm-hmm.
wants to that he wanted to do. I do take the point about the timer not working being a little bit hokey,
Mm-hmm. That it was fell out. Yeah.
but I do think that sort of speaks to the strength of Ian Glenn and Billy Postlethwaite's performances. That in the moment, that didn't really bother me because I was too caught up in I was too caught up in the moment. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see that is a little bit hokey, but it honestly didn't bother me when I was watching it.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, part of me would have rather Hank died than than Papa
No,
Nichols. But
no.
I know. But when you think about it, like they did move up Papa Nichols' story, by the way, because he and Juliet don't even reconcile until after she gets back. So
Okay.
they've moved up his story considerably, and I can just see that they have more story they want to tell with Hank. And with Papa Nichols, they're like, well, we did his arc, and now his arc can end with creating more tragedy for Juliet to
Like I
go
say,
back to.
I'm amazed. I'm stunned that he lasted as long as he did because I had him dead on at least three separate occasions.
He's still kicking at this point in the books. Hmm. All right, let's end on some crazy theories and silly fun. Tony C says, "Hi, really enjoyed this podcast, and sorry we're almost at the end of season 2. I think Silo 1 or 51 is the overseer of the other silos, which has more knowledge than the rest. I also think it's that silo that triggers the key Bernard carries. What do you think?"
Ooh, interesting. Why Bernard used the word technically 51 silos? Because that implies that that silo is different from the rest
Hmm.
somehow. I'm thinking maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's a good thought, Tony, that maybe that's like the control silo. But I'm not. If that were the case, I'm not sure why the other heads of IT would know about it. Like, if they knew about it, wouldn't that might that kind of defeat the point of it slightly? Um, yeah, I just wish. I guess we're never going to find out now, but I'm really intrigued by the use of the word technically.
Well, could it mean? I mean, this isn't genuine speculation because I know the answer, but just throwing it out there. Could it mean that technically because one of the silos is dead?
Yes, and that would be that would fit because that would be Silo 17. Bernard knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, Tony. We don't have enough information to rule that out.
Hmm.
But I'm not as crazy world building goes. I'm not feeling that at this moment.
Do you have any thoughts on the number 50 or 51? Or do you just think like 50 is a nice round number?
Oh, 50 is a nice round number.
And then why 51, technically?
Yeah. And is it 51 or is it 1? Like, how are the
Hmm.
silos numbered? Does it matter how they're numbered? Are they numbered
That's
at
a good
random?
question. It's a good question. Um, It's kind of leading me. Tony continues. It's kind of leading me slightly away from my original theory that a climate catastrophe was the reason the silos were constructed. I had the idea that a group of humans were sent to find a new Earth and that their return would be the day it's safe to leave. I'm beginning to feel now that the whole thing may be a huge social experiment. Either way, I'm invested in staying on to find out. So lots more people falling in line with your social experiment theory.
Yeah, I think me and Tony are on more or less the same page. Although I do like the idea that a bunch of humans have been sent into space,
Hmm.
and the people in the silo are just waiting for them to return.
But
Yeah,
they don't seem to know. Yeah.
yeah, but they may not know. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Lucas would be the only one who understands space. Now
Yes.
that Meadows is dead. Yeah.
Yes.
Tony says Solo is my favorite character, but I also have a soft spot for Bernard. I find Juliet's exploits to be a tad OTT at times. All in all, though, next to Severance, it's my favorite series at the moment. And thanks again for your work. I love both your takes on things. All the best for now, Tony Curran. Well, thank you, Tony. Brandon says, "Hi guys, my new fave episode of the entire show. That ending had my jaw on the floor. I'm right there with you guys. Surely, WTF, man, have some heart." Oh, so this should have gone after episode 9. Yeah, I guess it's confirmed via closed captioning. But to me, the voice in the tunnel sounded more human than AI. And then referring to themselves as "we" implies the founders. What do you think of that?
No, I'm not sure that it does. Because I think if it were a singularity, it would refer to itself. It may refer to itself plurally.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, I believe I figured it out. If I nail it, Elysia, you can let me know in the email, but leave it out of the pod. The 51st silo is the founder silo, and the next 2 seasons will be all the silos uniting against the big bad one. Brandon
Yeah,
T.
that could work.
I mean, I'm obviously not confirming shit. um okay. So here's a theory I got from Michael J and a few others on Discord about the keypad entry code. So the keypad entry code again is 552039. And a lot of people are asking, is this the date they entered the silo? So that would be May 5th, 2039, if that were the case. What do you think of that?
Interesting. That would work.
But
That
then do
would work.
all, like, I was trying to remember, did we ever see any of the numbers that Solo entered? Did they end? Was it the same number?
I don't think you can tell.
No. I couldn't find it in my notes, so I don't think so. But yeah, that seems to be a popular theory at the moment.
It works.
Yeah, it works. It works. Yeah. Yeah, because if we think about like the keys we have, the clues we have about it being near future, like someone. So if it's 2039, that is then 14 years from our time. Well, that's not quite
Yeah, a date wouldn't have become an anachronism in
right.
14 years.
Yeah. It wouldn't be like I'm courting him, you know. That's I think that's the equivalent of what date sounds like to her. Nancy M says, I just got back from walking the dogs in a snowstorm and listening to the pod. I haven't finished it yet, but I need to send these thoughts before I forget. I'm pretty sure that the cloth the kids were painting on, yeah, it's a cloth that Juliet held up to the camera. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Also, the comment that Daniel told Helen about New Orleans, I took that to be a reference to the reinforcement work the Army Corps of Engineers did to shore up the dikes post Katrina. So he was showing off to her. So, but yeah, if that was, I mean, maybe not Katrina specifically
Yeah,
because
it would have to have been something else because Daniel couldn't possibly be old enough to. Yeah, no, the timeline doesn't work.
right. But maybe I mean New Orleans obviously is low sea level and yeah, well, makes sense that they would be doing something with dikes in general. Also, some comments I've meant to send in earlier. It's about Rick Amundsen. I liked the way they rounded out his character in one of the earlier episodes. We learned that he has a wife and a baby on the way, and his interaction with Sims told us a lot about his values. He is committed to his new post, so he won't divulge what he knows to Sims, but he gives it some thought, and as a sign of loyalty, he does meet with Sims and gives him one piece of information, and he tells him that's all he's getting. Telling us more about his background and then watching him deal with this moral question about what to do, I thought rounded him out. I'm not sure whether we will see more of him next season, but if we do, I wonder if they will continue to expand his character. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with what you said, and I also think his character might be developing in a darker direction though, just from like those looks he was giving. I mean, we know Sims set him up to hate Lucas, but now like those looks he was giving Lucas in the finale have me a bit worried.
Yes.
Hmm. Nancy says, finally, as a Canadian, I feel it is my responsibility to provide a fun fact about the showrunner Graham Yost. This is from Wikipedia. Yost was born in Etobicoke, Etobicoke in the Toronto metropolitan area. He is a son of Canadian television personality Elwie Yost, the longtime host of the public broadcasters TV Ontario's Saturday Night at the Movies. I too was born in Etobicoke. Cool. And TV Ontario is like the US PBS network. I remember watching his dad on TV for many years. Elwie Yost was a walking encyclopedia of film knowledge, and he would introduce old movies with background information and interviews every weekend. At first, they were just with local movie experts, but the show grew in popularity, and eventually stars would come on the show as well. In an age before the internet, it boggles my mind how he knew so much. Apparently, when he retired in 1999, a copy of all of his interviews on the show was donated to the Motion Pictures Academy. Just imagine what life was like for young Graham growing up. No wonder he went into the movie business and is so good at it. He has the DNA of a Canadian movie historian legend. Oh, that's great. That's really fun to know. I had no idea.
Cool.
Cincinnati Joe says, question about your favorite Lucas. When he gets back up top, Lucas acts like life in the silo is over, but there doesn't seem to be evidence of that. There have been rebellions before, and the silo was okay. The algorithm said it told him the same thing that it told Meadows and Salvador Quinn. That affected them greatly, but they didn't think the end was near. If the algorithm was definitely going to kill the silo, wouldn't they all be dead before Lucas gets up top? Why is he certain that they're doomed? Telling Bernard that's why the key fob isn't lighting up, and Sims to see the vault while he can. Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I think there's more that we didn't see about that conversation.
Yes.
Joe says, in the podcast, I think John suggested that opening the outer door might trigger the safeguard. Could be, but then wouldn't Lucas be trying to stop that? Even without the safeguard, seems like he and Bernard would be trying to stop people opening the outer door. At this time, Lucas has no reason to think that Patrick is going to suddenly lead an effort to go out. Not even Knox anticipated that. And yeah, I mean, I would say Bernard actually was trying to. He kicked everyone out of the deputy station and positioned himself there with a gun, which, granted, on the one hand, it seems he wanted to go out, although maybe only after he saw Juliet. But also, I assumed he was trying to block people from going through, because that's how you get to the outside, through
Yeah.
the sheriff's station.
Yeah. But, by the way, that one guy that he tells not to leave, is that just to have somebody to help him put the suit on?
Yeah, I think so. And do you know who that was? That was the guy who last season was so afraid of having Sims locked up in jail. Remember? And Joe says, related to that, I wonder if Lucas is somewhat safe telling Bernard about what he learned from the algorithm, because Bernard, as head of IT, is allowed to know. Yeah, I don't know. Lucas was like, pretend you're talking about something serious. And then they talk about something serious. Like, just. Thanks for your coverage, Cincinnati, Joe. Well, thank you, Joe, for your email. Dr. James says, Elysia and Luke, I cannot adequately explain how much I've enjoyed your Silo podcast. In fact, enough that this is the first time I've taken to provide feedback or a question. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
I'm with Luke as a non-book reader, and am only still in this category as I love the idea of being naive to the full story. I truly appreciate the style of this podcast, the discussions that have taken place, and the grace and kindness that you show each other and the audience. Thank you so much. We try not to be crappy people.
We try.
Yeah, we do our best. I ended up binging season 1 of the show in your pod as I waited by each week for season 2 pairs of shows and pods to be released. I have found that by watching the show and then listening allows me to go beyond the surface and consider and understand the show so much better, which is why I would have typically read the books first. So yes, thank you. That's exactly what we hope to be. So it's, just a general thank you for our time and effort, and that this is the first subscription that James is entering. So thank you. That's really touching. My question, if this has been addressed, I've missed it, please. Yeah. My question is, it is on my understanding that the silos have been around much longer than the 140 years since the last rebellion. Yes, indeed. We got the number. What was it? 352? Or what?
352.
Yeah. That's what Bernard said. That's how many years. If Silo 18, I think you have suggested over 300 years. Yeah. I find it interesting that over this period of time, with just 10,000 souls, that the ethnicities of many of the characters have remained so clear. While in the show, there are many biracial couples, one would think that a new truly biracial ethnicity would exist. In the maintenance of ethnic diversity Is the maintenance of ethnic diversity part of what the population control has tried to achieve? Thoughts on that?
Maybe, but I mean, there's also just the practicality of, you got to cast actors, and so you probably don't want to add that. You probably don't want to add too many stipulations around that. But possibly there's a plot reason for it as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I would be interested to hear from people. 300 years, is that enough to? And it's obviously not that everyone is a biracial couple, but certainly that happens a lot. So I'm not sure how much that would change. 300 years sounds like a lot, but I don't know. It's how many generations? I guess it's a good number of generations. Yeah, interesting. If anyone has any more thoughts on that, please do write in. Thank you, Elysia and Luke. James J. Laskin, PT, PhD. Carlos25 says, hello, love the podcast. Just started watching Silo about 2 weeks ago. My wife and I binged the whole show quick. I discovered your podcast from the rating score on Apple. Yay. See, ratings are important, people.
Leave a rating.
If you leave a nice rating for us, it really helps. Carlos says, We have never heard of the books and have not researched anything online. We promise we are non-book readers. My wife had a theory, though. Plain and simple, it's adult Inside Out. So Inside Out referring to the animated film. Meaning, these silos are thoughts of a human being or the inner working of a human body. The opening title video shows a silo with a spine overlapped. We had figured before the latest episode that Silo 18 represented the year of the Pesson. Thus, they're having Freedom Day since you become adult at age 18. The other silo had Founders Day because they still live with their parents. The porters can represent thoughts or nerves or blood cycling throughout the body. Judicial is common sense, and IT, well, it's troubleshooting and knowledge stored. The relics that had been in the quote unquote wild and found were all relics that a young person would use or know about, such as Pez, Frisbee, Book of Georgia, camcorder, watch, etc. This is a working theory, having fun guessing what's going to happen next. I don't follow the other podcast that talks about the book, so hopefully you can let me know either way if we have guessed or not. So what do you think, Luke?
I don't agree with that theory, but if it turned out to be true, I wouldn't be disappointed. I think that's awesome.
I love the theory. I'm not going to confirm or deny anything. I love the theory. They definitely are suggesting at least a metaphorical similarity between the silo and a human body in the opening.
I love the imagination behind some of these theories.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great one. We want to hear more. We want to hear how this theory develops for you over the next season, especially. And Lucky Knows 7 on Blue Sky. This is the last silo feedback, by the way. Says, not sure if this is a new idea / joke or if I'm coming up with something others have already expressed, but I want to see a game called The Sims where you control Robert Sims and his family and they all have that crystal. The internet tells me it's called a plumb bob over their heads. I think we want to see Jean play that game, and he's just going to have them walk repeatedly into the walls.
Just Jean walking them into the wall repeatedly, drowning them repeatedly.
I love it. All right, so we also got one bit of feedback from Soph YB about A Christmas Carol. She says, I remain firmly in the Muppets Christmas Carol camp. Light the lamp, not the rat. But I agree, it's largely about nostalgia. I remember my little brother hiding behind a cushion with embarrassment during the Love Has Gone song. Scrooged, for me, falls into the same category as High Fidelity, as something that seemed legendary at the time, but as an adult, modern day rewatch seems like misogynistic drivel. I'll definitely be watching It's Christmas Carol next year because A, Carrie Fisher, B, epic pun.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this makes you sound like a misogynist, but I so disagree with you about High Fidelity. High Fidelity is awesome.
I've rewatched High Fidelity recently, and I do think it stands up, but it's a bit more misogynistic than I remember, but it is also, like, the point is, my biggest, not problem with it, but, like, thing that makes me uncomfortable watching it is I think of John Cusack as always playing, like Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything, these good guys. And this character is meant to be an asshole. Like, he is an apologetic asshole who has maybe a slight reform by the end, but for most of the movie he is a total jackass.
Did you watch the TV series where they gender flipped with Zoe Kravitz? Mm-hmm. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I was by the end of the season, because they were obviously, they were going their own direction with it too, and like they added another character that added another wrinkle, and by the end of the season I was really wishing that there were more, that they continued it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, Scrooge was just a mess too.
Yeah, it was just a hopeless mess.
Christmas Carol for Carrie Fisher and the epic pun. And I do recommend A Diva's Christmas Carol, the original one. That was fun.
If only because of the behind the music.
The VH1 Ghost of Christmas Future,
Yeah.
Looking ahead, Ken Walsh says, hello, finally got to finish season 2. Loved that the last episode and I've come around on Walker from book to TV character. Also not that hung up, but though also not that hung up, but prefer book solo / Jimmy, but can't let kids go. Elise became one of my favorite book characters. Loved, and Elise is the one that I think they've aged up and are calling Hope now. Loved everything about her, and as it could have been recency bias. And as I said, it could have been recency bias. I went back and looked at episodes and still didn't like the massive changes for the kids. After listening to the recent interview with Sal Calleros, I understand why the change and take out certain things, but not having a slightly older version of Elise really bugged me. Maybe Hope can become that character, but we'll have to wait and see. Still loving Silo. Also love when my favorite books become films or TV shows and succeed. Thanks again for all Luke, Abby, and yourself do to make the watching experience better. P.S. Absolutely loved your Nosferatu lore on that podcast. You do the work so we don't have to. Cheers, Ken. So yeah, if, on the Lorehounds feed, there's a recent episode about Nosferatu, which is a special pet interest of mine. So I went on, I dropped a Nosferatu primer on the films that came before. And thank you, Ken. Yeah, I mean, I know Elise is one of the ones. She's such a cute character in the show, but in the books, but she's 8 years old. So I'm not surprised. Like, they have Benny there as the requisite 8-year-old, but like, he's doing as much as he can. You know, he's hanging
Yeah,
around
and
being
I
cute.
think you already pointed out in the last episode there is a child welfare issue there. There's only so long that child actors can work, and there's only so many lines that they can reasonably be expected to commit to memory.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that's why the age wonkiness. Yeah. Yeah, and I know some people wish they just kept that character's name Elise then, but maybe they're like, oh, well, people will think it's not Elise because of the age and whatever other story changes are coming. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Joseph Lalo says, yeah, it starts with compliments again. We are being blessed with compliments today. Thank you, guys. It says, I started listening to your post-show recaps, but the way you spoke about the books made me so intrigued that I've just spent my summer, I'm in Australia, reading the entire series. Thank you for the team for such thoughtful, engaging podcasting. I'm really looking forward to hearing your season finale shows. Best, Joseph. So, yeah, I just, yeah, if you are listeners at home, if you're picking up the books after this season, I definitely want to hear your reader thoughts as you go. So please do share them on Discord, Blue Sky, or send them to woolshiftdustpodcast@gmail.com.
Oh, speaking of Blue Sky, Stuart Elder pointed out to me on Blue Sky that I'd been making a mistake. So Rick Gomez played George Loz in Band of Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, not Garnier.
Okay.
And he also pointed out that the sheriff in Silo 17 is the actor that played Joe Liebgott in Band of Brothers as well.
Okay.
There's a strong Band of Brothers connection going on.
Connection. Bond. In Dutch, that word is band. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for the correction. I still haven't watched it, so I don't know who any of these people are, but I did love that there's a character called Gonorrhea.
No, but he's right. Rick Gomez played George Loz, not Garnier.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And our final piece of feedback is from Paul Kent. And Paul says, I'm changing my reading plan given that you'll be covering Dune in the book club soon. But where should I start with the books, which I've never read? Should I start with the original novel, then read the prequel novels? Looks like 5. Well, actually, there's. Well, it depends. So there's a lot of prequel novels. Okay. So, and then the questions continue. Is the TV show Dune Legacy based on the prequel novels? I've seen the movies. And then, yeah, it says, I'll wait till Severance is completed and then binge the whole thing. I'm now tempted to read Dune for the first time in chronological order. Am I mad? I've seen the films a couple of times. I bought them, which I gather follow the novel quite faithfully. It could be interesting, a totally different perspective. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, hope that you guys are in good health. Yeah, so okay, so we're gonna have 2 types of Dune coverage on the 2 different feeds. So on this public feed, Luke and I are starting, so shortly after this episode comes out, I'm reissuing the intro episode that we produced last year with a new intro that's going to explain things as well. But basically, we are breaking down the original Dune book, the one that started it all. Luke and I are going to be discussing it on this feed in 5 parts. Starting with, we've already recorded the first one, and now that we're done with Silo, we are turning our attention to Dune for this podcast. So it's going to start with that, like a fairly thorough analysis of the original book, because it is the sort of basis for everything else that comes to. So I would suggest maybe reading the original book first, just as your basis to ground you in this world.
Yeah. We sort of started out with we're going to do it in 2 episodes, and it was 3, then it was 4, and now it's 5.
It needs all the space.
It does.
The last episode is just going to be ranking the most iconic scenes. So anyone who's read the book and hasn't done so yet, please send in what you think are the 3 most iconic scenes from the original Dune book for our rankings.
Yeah, the point being, Paul, is if you start down this road, it's going to take you a little while. So dig in.
Well, I mean, the first book itself, you can read that and then go travel along with us as we break it down for weeks. But so that is set at one point in the timeline, and that original book is the basis for the Lynch movie, for the first 2 Villeneuve movies. I don't know that I would call any of them especially faithful. And there's also the sci-fi show, and there's Jodorowsky's Dune, which is a documentary about a movie that was never made, but it's insane and great. And we're going to talk about that as well. So we are going to be doing an entire series talking about how these adaptations handle the source material once we've laid the groundwork by talking through that first book.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we'll get into it obviously in the series. I think the Villeneuve movies follow the book as closely as it's possible for a movie to follow the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean they follow it particularly closely.
Yeah, I mean, he's had to cut out entire aspects of the world or the universe, galaxy, whatever. Yeah. So that's what's going to be going on over the coming months in this feed. That whole first, the original book to lay the foundation for everything, and then the adaptations thereof. And then we're going to, after we talk through the adaptations that exist of the first book, we're going to talk about the Dune Messiah book, which is going to be the basis of Villeneuve's 3rd movie. And then we're going to talk about the sci-fi adaptation of that book.
Has it been confirmed is that actually in production?
It's at least in pre-production.
Okay.
And then, meanwhile, in the book club feed, so Abby and I are going to be, now that we've wrapped up our Silo coverage, we are continuing Hugh Howey Book Club by talking about his short stories in the machine learning book. That's the same short story collection that I think most book club members probably have, because it has the 3 Silo short stories in it as well. We've already talked about those in the book club. We're going to be talking about his other stories, 1 per month. And meanwhile, we're going to be talking about the Dune prequels. Now, when I say prequels in this case, I'm talking about all the way back at the beginning of the timeline, 10,000 years before the original Dune book is set. And it's also, that is about 100 years. It starts about 100 years before the Dune Legacy TV show on HBO. So it's, I do still recommend starting with the original book, because you're going to see, well, Abby and I, as we discuss these books, we are also referring back to that original, because it does draw on the same things with the same families, the Harkonnens, the Atreides, the same planets are coming back in different ways. And yeah. So that is for that, we're starting back. There's also short stories. There are 2 trilogies set during that point in the timeline. There's the Legends of Dune, which is about the machine wars, and that is the Butlerian Jihad. What is it? The second one's the Machine War, and the third one is the Battle of Corrin. And then the next trilogy is the Great Schools trilogy, and that's Sisterhood of Dune, Mentats of Dune, and Navigators of Dune. And then that is, as far as the books, then there's a big 10,000 year gap until we get to some prequels shortly before the original novel. But between those 10,000 years ago prequels. There are also short stories which are collected in Tales of Dune Expanded Edition. So we're actually starting with the first story in the timeline is a short story called Hunting Harkonnens. And Abby and I actually just recorded that episode and we'll be releasing it soon. Yeah, so okay, I hope that clears things up a little bit.
Yeah.
But please let me know if anyone else has any more questions. All right, and that is our feedback. Luke, do you have final thoughts on the season?
No, you've squeezed this lemon comprehensively dry once again.
I mean, I'm definitely gonna miss Silo, but I'm also it's been like all immersive. So yeah, I'm excited for Dune Project to begin.
Yeah, we're going to immerse ourselves in yet another massive, sprawling universe.
Yeah, with heartbreaking political intrigue.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone so much for sending in your feedback. You've made it like a really lively and fun discussion and given us a lot to think about. I'm sorry if I missed anyone's feedback. There's been a lot of discussion going on Discord and other media. If you want to make sure that your thoughts are covered in a future episode, please do email them to woolshiftustpodcast@gmail.com, and you'll find that link in the show notes. And as Paul said a good example earlier this episode, voicemails are encouraged if you feel up to the task. And do also, of course, come chat with us on Discord and Blue Sky. And you'll find those links in the show notes as well. The final spoiler cast of the season is my discussion with Abby is for spoiler cast 10B, because there were 2 spoiler casts for the finale. This one is Daniel and Helen. So it's about the book version of those 2 characters that we saw in the finale final scene. We're talking about the past, present, and future story of those 2 characters and what we learned from that scene in the TV show that we think will change that story and how. And I want to welcome new Silazins and Storyzins. So thank you to new Silazins, Amelie R., Purple Nova, Sarah, Kali S., Kayla H., Rob S., Peter O.H., Matt S., Chi, Hans Jakob, and Julia Jans. And thank you to new Storyzin, Jeffrey B. And Storyzins are Silazins. So if you join through Supercast, then you can become a Silazin, which is the same benefits as Patreon, but cheaper. But then there's also a Storyzin level, which combines the book club feed with also the Canon Padawan feed, which is the extra feed for my Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast. And as I said, next in the book club is going to be Machine Learning, the first story in Hugh Howey's collection, and the Dune prequel stories and novels. And of course, there is, if you're not interested in like the Dune or the other Howie book club stuff or our holiday stuff, then you can just get Silo season passes. You'll find links in the show notes, and you just get access to the Silo episodes for a one-time fee. You can choose which version of that you would want. And just, even if you're not a subscriber, we are just so glad to have you in the community overall. We're so glad to have you sending your thoughts or just lending us your ears, whatever the case may be. And thank you especially to those of you who have recommended us to friends or left kind reviews. I've definitely been seeing positive results from that. It's hugely helpful.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We greatly appreciate that.
And looking forward to keeping the party going through Dune, as I said. And the Lorehounds feed, meanwhile, there's just released a Marvel MCU 2025 preview with the 9 projects coming out this year and what to look forward to in each. Jean and I are also putting out a Creature Commandos episode, and then look for in that feed also the next Silmarillion stories. And I'm starting my Oscar prep series right now. So Oscar season is, well, I was going to say it's nigh, but it's here. We are in Oscar season. The nominations are out, and I am watching all those movies.
I love the story about the Mexican spoof
of Emilia
Perez.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Yeah, we are doing a special discussion of I'm talking to some Mexican and trans friends about what the whole backlash against that movie is about, where it's coming from, and
okay.
So we'll explain it to those of you who don't know. But yeah, they did. Mexico responded to this all French film that's about Mexican stereotypes. They made an all Spanish film about French stereotypes.
Yeah, so a baguette heiress marrying a croissant, which is just...
Yeah, it's called Johanna Sacre Bleu. The name makes me laugh. But do also, by the way, Star Trek fans, check out David's live cast with the Captain's Pod about that new Star Trek movie with Michelle Yeoh, and you can find that in the Captain's Pod feed. Do also explore the links in the show notes to see the other podcasts in the network. Properly Howard, I think they're getting toward the end of their Few Good Films series. The Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, of course, with me. Radioactive Ramblings. They just finished up the first Red Rising book, and they're doing Studio Ghibli films. Never mind the music is psychology and music. And of course, there is a separate Severance feed. So you can click the link in the show notes, or you can search for Severance Lorehounds. There's also a preview episode in this feed if you want to check that out. There's actually a preview episode from season 1, but there's also a preview episode now from season 2. And Luke, what's up with It Could Be Said?
So obviously that's taken a little break while I've had my health issues, but I think we're recording the next episode of that this coming weekend, so that would be the 1st or 2nd of February.
Okay. All right. And I think that's all we wrote.
Wow, it's been, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Luke, for being my co-host this season through sickness and health.
Yeah, and like I say, thank you everybody for the very kind messages. If I didn't respond to you, I responded to as many as I could, but thank you for the very kind messages. It was really very much appreciated.
Yeah. And now we got a jet. We got our thumper in the sand calling our ride. Shai Hulud is coming. We'll see you on the Arakeen sands for Dune, and with all the explanations of what those words mean.
Hey everyone, David here. Severance is back. The Lorehounds are partnering with Properly Howard to bring you in-depth weekly coverage of Season 2. Join me, John, Anthony, and Steve as we unpack every twist, theory, and revelation. We've created a dedicated feed just for our Severance coverage. Simply search for Severance Lorehounds in your podcast app, or find the direct link in our link tree. Our weekly episodes dig deep into the show's mysteries, themes, and bigger questions about identity and consciousness that makes Severance so compelling. Season Pass and regular community subscribers get ad-free access to our weekly episodes, plus exclusive content like our Supply Closet bonus series, featuring fascinating conversations with experts like the team from Never Mind the Music. We've explored the neuroscience of memory and personality, decoded the hidden meanings in the show's musical themes, and there's much more to come. You'll also get Steve and Anthony's complete Season 1 rewatch series. We believe in total transparency with our listeners, and unlike mammalians nurturable, we're happy to share all of our secrets. Find the link for the Severance feed in the show notes below, or search Severance Lorehounds wherever you get your podcasts. Come theorize with us about what's really happening at Lumen.
And remember, the episode you think you're about to hear is merely a reflection of the episode that thinks it's about